probably one of the biggest things for me has been learning the type of person that flourishes in my practice and the type that doesn't. And it's not that there's anything wrong or right about either of them. It's just that this is the way the practice is, and it suits some people and it doesn't suit other people. That's probably one of the things that I've gotten.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Healthy Business Lab podcast, where we interview amazing allied health business owners to pick their brains so we get some great insights, learnings from everything they've done in and around their business. And today I'm super excited to have someone I know quite well, Amanda Abel from the Northern Centre for Child and Adolescent Development, on our podcast today. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Craig. Very exciting. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. I know you've got so much wide breadth of experience in the psychology profession and obviously running your business there. I always love our guests to be able to introduce themselves, share a bit of their background, but also start with a bit of a way of sharing insights from how you've leveraged your expertise in managing your own business as well, and this idea of how do we look after ourselves as business owners as well.
That was a long question.
I'm happy for you to take that wherever you feel like going. As I know our conversations often go, take it wherever you want to go, and then we'll dig into bits and pieces of it from there.
Yeah, cool. I think it's an interesting point, I guess, in terms of where I find myself now as a business owner and psychologist. And I think I've been a psychologist for about 17 years. I think it's about that. Who's counting? But I've had my business for about, I think it's been 12 years. And that, I guess, period of time, becoming more confident as a psychologist and interested in, I guess, different areas of psychology. So I've primarily worked with children and families as a psychologist in the clinical setting, but also during that space of time, I have branched out as well and worked sort of in that more corporate space, and did quite a bit of work in kids' digital media and advertising. And I got to do heaps of fun work with like Lego, and got to go to Lego HQ in Singapore. That was so much fun. So it's been a journey for me as a business owner, but then also clinically, and learning different ways to apply my clinical knowledge and my developmental knowledge of kids. And I guess there's kind of been these two sort of parallel journeys and areas of growth going on.
I love that. There's so much there that I want to pack in to jump into personally, especially when you mentioned Lego. For anybody watching, the visual one of this, you see a bunch of Lego over my shoulder, a few Yodas and a few other things. But before we get sidetracked from my personal interests, I'd love for you to share how have you leveraged the mindset side of things in your own business, and even from the sense of things that we often, I know as a business owner, there's lots of things that I know from my expertise in managing money and those sorts of things that at times I lose sight of in my own life, in my own business. But when I reconnect with it, it's like, yeah, I need to remember that as a business owner, because that's what will ultimately help me serve my clientele better and the like, and that idea of practicing what we preach. What has your journey been in that side of things, in looking after the mental side of life for yourself in managing your business?
Yeah, good question. It's really funny because it's something that, so I just fell into owning a business. I can't remember if we've spoken about this before. Had been working as a psychologist, and then I had my daughter. I was not ever really very much a career-driven person. So I sort of didn't really have big intentions about returning to work after I had my child. And, I was just sort of planning on let's see what happens. And then sort of probably 6 months into being a new mum, I was like, yeah, I want to go back. And I think it reignited the passion, because I was very burnt out right before I got pregnant, and I was looking at a career change at that point. So I think I was probably a little bit lost, and then I think becoming a mum really encouraged me to return back to being a psychologist. And it just happened that when you work with kids, especially I have always worked with children with autism, particularly young children, and doing diagnosis and that kind of thing, it can be hard to find a space to work from that your clients feel comfortable, and that they can be noisy and loud if they need to. And I had a few difficulties finding a location and to work from that where we weren't disturbing someone having a massage in the room next door or an adult counselling session next door. So I sort of just had to get my own premises. And so that's how I kind of just fell into it, because then it was like, oh, now I've got all these rooms. Now I need to fill them. So I was literally rattling around. Yes. And so it just sort of slowly grew. I never had a business plan. I never really aspired initially to create something as big as what I have created, but it just happened. And I guess luckily I was really motivated and very into it. So I was able to kind of stick with it. But having just fallen into being a business owner meant that I wasn't really prepared mentally. I hadn't owned a business before. So definitely in terms of, I suppose just the mental health side of things as the business owner and managing that balance between my personal life and being the business owner, that was trial and error. And I just had to learn that as I went. And there was definitely challenges along the way to test me. Yeah, so it was very much a let's just wing it and see how we go, which is still kind of my approach to life, as you know. And in terms of the mindset from a business perspective, that's also just something that's evolved. So it, again, wasn't something that sort of sat down and planned.
Yeah, cool. And is there anything that you're leaning on in that space now to help you? Any sort of practices, routines, reflections, or those sorts of things that you're sort of utilizing at the moment?
I suppose in a lot of ways, from what I've learned in this period of time, it's been very much about learning to pace myself. So almost more kind of proactive strategies of pacing myself, planning, setting small achievable goals and things like that. But I guess from a mental health perspective as well, I've eventually become good at kind of switching off, usually on weekends. So there'll often be weekends where I don't even log in to my emails or check the calendars and things like that. I guess just little practices like that. I'm not big on mindfulness. We've spoken before. I've got ADHD. I don't know. That's one thing where I can't practice what I preach.
Well, it's a different type of mindfulness though, isn't it? And that's why I think if we sort of frame that a little bit differently, I love how, again, what I just took away, 3 sort of key points there was something that another guest had sort of said very recently, and is that pacing yourself. And so for me, that's nearly a mindful practice of I actually have to put attention to it, attention and intention to this idea of pacing myself, because if that's not natural necessarily, you touch upon the ADHD part of it, then, well, that is actually being quite mindful that I'm just need to be conscious of this and I need to take my time with it. So I love that idea of, again, just being conscious and intentional around pacing yourself and the active switching off, again, intentional idea of, hey, cool, just making it clear. So what I was hearing, so the subtext under that, I was literally, that stuff sits over there somewhere. It's not near me. It's not around me. We actively do something else. The other thing you didn't say explicitly, but from what you shared there and winging it a little bit and those sorts of things, is basically the idea of doing it your own way as well, and really getting comfortable with that, which I'm guessing over the years, potentially, I know I definitely have, sort of like, I should be doing things a certain way because this is the way a business owner acts, or this is the way a psychologist would act. Is that a fair comment?
It's funny you say it because I've never been like that. So I've always been doing it my own way. And I think sometimes probably to the detriment of me as a professional, because I'm not to everyone's cup of tea. I'm not to everyone's taste. What you see is what you get, and very authentic. And so I don't come across as a super professional, clinical type of psychologist. And it's not to say I'm not a good psychologist, but it's just that sort of facade and mask doesn't work well for me. And it can be very tempting as a psychologist when you first graduate to be like that, because it's kind of what we're taught. We're not taught to keep ourselves a bit reserved and a bit separate. But yeah, definitely I very much have done it my own way in terms of the business particularly. So from the start, I sort of was very excited by the business and did lots of sort of marketing courses and things like that, and really loved all of that and got quite excited by that. And it probably was quite different at that point in time to what other practices were doing in terms of their marketing, for example.
Yeah, cool. I love that. And again, that's a great knowledge and share for people too. Yeah. Don't put a mask on for people out there that feel that and feel uncomfortable about it. And just thinking, you touched on autism earlier on, that idea of masking and unmasking is such a challenge thing. So if you think of a professional space, that's so cool. A bunch of notes there on that. But I think that was a nice little also segue into what we love to talk here, experiments in business and that business side of it there. And you touched upon marketing, and even a touch earlier there, you mentioned a few trying many different things over the years. And again, 12 years, there's countless things that you've done, you've tried, things that have worked, that haven't worked. I'd love you to start to, I guess, share a few of those experiences and maybe that marketing side when you first started and some of the things, lessons you've learned.
Yeah, good question. I guess in terms of like, say, the marketing side of things, and that was very eye-opening for me because I'm like such a consumer. I'm just like shopping and I'm a real consumer. And so it was really funny for me learning about being on the other side of that and about marketing funnels and EDMs and just all these sorts of different tactics and, nothing yucky and sleazy marketing, but I guess ways of promoting my brand, because that was my goal. And I guess that's what I learned through a lot of that sort of work that I did in the early days. Was my goal was about brand exposure initially. And so just learning different things I could do for that. And yeah, there were lots of things that lots of mistakes made, printing off postcards that never got sent or that had errors on them, or like just doing things that were probably, I think, ineffective for me as a business, were things like expos and having a stall at an expo. I don't think that really was particularly helpful. But then I guess at the same time, one of the things that I did learn was about actually being able to evaluate that and measure that, and like what strategies that you're using in your marketing which ones are leading to leads and more referrals and things like that. Lots of lessons learned there.
Yeah, we can dig into a few of those, but I just want to circle back in some aspects to that notion of what you found fascinating from being the consumer to then actually being the person that was marketing, and I'll put inverted commas here, and that idea. And I would guess, given the fact of your background, your profession, understanding the behavioral concepts and how the mind works, do you feel as though you sort of like lent into that side of things to go, how could you unpack that and how could you make it work for you? And again, with that idea, touch point of not having sleazy, salesy sort of thing for the type of work that you're doing, and obviously there's certain parameters around what can and can't be done from a health and a practice perspective. So I guess, curious as to how you lent into that or leveraged that at all.
Yeah, definitely. Probably just being a psychologist, we're probably all like this. We're just so interested in other people and people's minds and how they think and how they respond to things. And so doing exercises like working out your ideal client, I found that really easy. Also, I've kind of always been the target audience of my business as well as a mum, and that has made it a lot easier. But I definitely, I think as a secondary interest, am very interested in advertising and marketing and promotion and things like that. And it probably is tied into why I love psychology too. So I definitely did lean into that side of things and really enjoyed it.
And then also, as you talked about at the back end of that, the measuring and evaluation of it, which again, I know is very part of what you do daily from a delivery standpoint, but how you find that process when you go to the business side of it and then going that this process, is it very similar, or do you find you do it a little bit differently for kind of the business operations, whether it's your marketing, whether it's operations, whether it's financials? How do you find that sort of measurement and evaluation?
Yeah, again, probably something that comes naturally to psychologists, being at uni and doing lab reports and hypotheses and wonder what the expected outcome's going to be, and then getting surprised or not surprised. So generally it is all very similar, whether we're doing sort of pre and post treatment measurement with clients versus asking clients, how did you hear about us? I guess it all really is fundamentally the same in terms of when we're collecting data that's going to help us make our next decision. So with the clients, has this treatment been effective? And if it has, then great, we do this. If it hasn't, then we do that. And same with the marketing side of things. And yeah, you're right, even from a financial perspective and all the work that we've been doing, it really does follow that similar pattern, I think.
Yeah, cool. And what I'm hearing, the subtext to kind of all that is just a genuine curiosity around business in general as well. And you sort of just lift the hood under that and you just keep on, where does that take me? Is that a fair comment?
Totally. Like I feel, talking about experiments, I feel like the whole journey of being a business owner has been one big experiment. And it's just like probably only more recently have I really been able to take it a lot more seriously as a business, because in the early years, I didn't pay myself for quite a long time. And is this viable? Is it going to continue? And is like one big experiment. And I have always felt like I can just try different things and see what happens. Like, what have you got to lose? Whether it's marketing or changing processes or... I
love that. And even as you were talking, what was going around my head, for those that are seeing the visual side of this on my whiteboard, there is an experiment. It sort of touched me when you mentioned I sort of started to take business more seriously, but then I still get there's always been an element of fun with you. You had a fair comment as well. It's like, hey, I would be serious because I need to do X, Y, Z, but because I have the curiosity, I want to do these sorts of things, and I'm fairly easygoing with it. Is it always just making sure there's a fun element to keep you sort of moving in the directions that you want to go?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I don't know, that might be part of having ADHD, that I'm not going to do it if I'm not interested in it. So luckily.
Keep on going there.
Yeah. So that, definitely curious, and I've always wanted to make a workplace that people wanted to come to, that was as the clinicians, and then wanting to make it a waiting room and a clinical experience that families wanted to be in. And you need to have an element of fun and knowledge of the people, your target audience in both of those instances, to be able to execute that.
Yeah, nice. And I'd love to hear that. If we're talking about experiments, and you touched on there, the waiting room. What experiments have you done with your waiting room over the years? No doubt it's changed, for example, just a little bit.
Yeah, well, we've done lots of different things. And also our clientele has changed a bit too. So when I first started the business, we worked a lot with sort of quite young children, preschool aged, whereas now we do see a lot of adolescents and primary school age kids as well. So things like what you've got in the waiting room and what's accessible to your clients is something that has to, as your clients evolve. I always have wanted it's always had an element of, I call it day spa vibes, because I've always wanted it to be calm. Obviously, working with kids that might have sort of sensory differences, we have always had to be careful of not having like music really loud or really strong scents and fragrances and things like that. And so we have sort of probably more subtle elements in those areas. And then we changed physical locations, and at one point I had 2 practices, and so it was fun playing around with like, what can I do with this space, because my other secret passion is like interior design, so that lets us have a lot more experiments.
That's so cool. And again, knowing obviously we're a neurodivergent family, you have some of those things that you talk about, that waiting experience can very much affect and change what your time with the client could end like. At the end of the day, if these things that just aren't working for a client there, you could release them before they even get into the room to help them get to where they need to. That's great. I love that idea. Again, as you said, you basically, hey, I've got a theme and it's the day spa vibes. If I follow that theme and that has the feeling, then it makes people want to be calm, relaxed, chilled before they go into any interaction with any of yourself or the team. That's great. And I think so many learnings there, brain ticking over. But the other one, when you were talking about sort of experiments as well, you touched upon clinicians and team. I'd love to hear what sort of experiments you've had in the process of team development, team growth, and some of those sorts of things. How have you seen that evolve over the years as well?
Yeah. That has been a really interesting learning for me and journey as well. From the start, the team that I had at the start is not the same team that I've got today. Probably one of the biggest things for me has been learning the type of person that flourishes in my practice and the type that doesn't. And it's not that there's anything wrong or right about either of them. It's just that this is the way the practice is, and it suits some people and it doesn't suit other people. That's probably one of the things that I've gotten really slowly, and that is trial and error. And sometimes it's horrendously stressful and it's not a fun journey, but I've finally kind of developed a good understanding of that for myself. Yeah.
And has that just been the iterative approach to, to slowly over time finding all those little bits that go, oh yeah, that is us. This is the type. This is the way to approach it. Is that how you've sort of approached that? And has it just been a process of internal continual learning as well as guidance from coaches, outside people?
Yeah, definitely has been that internal learning, feedback. I'm still really good friends with so many of the employees that I've had over the years, and feedback from people has been really helpful. And I've had some really good mentors, coaches over the years as well. I mean, look, a lot of the time they're teaching you really great, new, valuable stuff, but also it's often a process of reassurance that I think maybe this person isn't the best fit for our team, and having someone help you work through that, I think is really quite beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think you say that it's kind of just getting that validation and that idea of bounce it around. And so on that, and you touch upon coaching and there as well, but I know you've continually had different forms of coaching over the years. How have you found that? 'Cause I personally find getting coaches, whether it's general coaches, specific ones, I consider that a bit of an experiment. I have sort of experiments, test and measure and some of those sorts of things. How has that experience been for you, and how has that even changed over the years, how you've approached that sort of support that you get outside of the business to be able to help you do what you want to do with the business?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I first discovered that I could have a coach, I was just like, oh, they're great. Okay, this is so much better. And the first coach that I had was a lady called Kathy Love, and she's Melbourne based as well. And she is an OT and worked in the pediatric space as well. And I can't even remember how I met her, but I remember getting her business card and going, wow, you're a business coach for allied health people working in pediatrics. This is awesome. And again, it was that reassurance and someone giving you the confidence, but also someone that had been there before and could learn from their experiences. And so that was a very much like a one-on-one coaching experience that we had, where we would meet like once a month or something like that. And then more recently, which was how we met, Gerda Muller, a psychologist, Queensland based, who has a whole academy for private practice allied health, I think, professionals. And that was a really big leap because that was a commitment. That wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to meet with you every month and pay you a couple of $100. It was like you're committing to paying quite a bit more. And I mean, not that it was a commitment that you couldn't get out of or anything, but she does ask for a commitment so that you can get the most
committing to the process at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, really, I'm the kind of person that needs that boundary putting.
Yeah, 100%. That's why that works so well. That's why I love that approach. It definitely works. Because you try to leave. If that's not for me, that's fine. If it is, then we're going to get outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really, really good. And that was more of a group mentoring experience and lots of other elements to it. And again, it's that kind of ongoing theme, I suppose. I keep referring back to it, of the validation and the reassurance, whether it's from the mentor or whether it's from other practice owners, that we're all in the same boat. And I think to finish the answer to the previous question about staffing, that's changed over the years. There have been patches where it's been incredibly difficult to recruit psychologists. And, there were times where it was very easy to recruit. And being in a group coaching setting is really helpful in those situations, because it's just like, we're all in the same boat, or we're all experiencing staff turnover. And I think that as a business owner, it just takes the pressure off her a bit. Like, because otherwise you start thinking, am I doing something wrong? Look, a lot of the time I am.
When you're sitting in the echo chamber, it's hard to just realise what's going on. And as a business owner, we get caught up in that. So, cool. Given you've touched on a couple of times as well, it'd be remiss to talk about your experiments on the financial side of business as well. Obviously, that is how we did get connected, through Gerda's amazing group there.
Yes. I mean, that one big
Where do we start here?
experiment. And you know what? I think being in that group coaching was so helpful when we did all start talking about our financial difficulties, because again, that was something you really don't talk to other people about. And to know that there were other practices in the same or worse position, it was very reassuring for all of us, just to normalise that experience. And part of it was about the climate, and part of it is about, for me, speaking for myself, I'm not very money-minded. And I think when you start a business, or for me, when I started the business, I had no idea. And I mean, you've spoken to me so many times trying to explain all the different tax things to me. Like, I had no idea. And you think you're going along okay, and then work cover bill comes in. I never signed up for this. What's this? And then that suddenly increases because your wages are becoming higher as your team grows. And then you've got your PAYG, and you've got your BAS and your personal tax. Oh, you know me. And I think for me, the entire time of having my business, up until a point where I met you, Craig, it was so confusing for me. And I mean, I'm a relatively intelligent person, but that just not understanding how it all works and not knowing the time frame. And I have a good accountant, I have a good bookkeeper, but I think it's never really been something that things have never really been explained to me in a way that it's been able to make sense. And that's really not their responsibility. It's my job to learn. But it had been so confusing for me and very stressful. And then also, I think as a business owner, as your business grows, you've got access to a pretty big pool of money, and you've got access to pretty big credit limits too. And I think that is where a lot of us can go wrong, because if you've got access to so much cash and you don't know that there's a $20,000, $30,000 tax bill coming up next month, or you've forgotten, or you're so caught up in everything else that that is just not on my radar, you do get yourself in trouble. And, I think most of us end up on payment plans with the ATO and debt that we need to pay off. And the work with you really helped me to know that I wasn't the only person in that position. But also, I wish I had known about the profit first approach, like 12 years ago, because it has just, and it is something that I was always crying out for and trying to seek. And my husband and I have always done like the barefoot investor stuff with our personal finances. And I was always like, I want something like this for the business, but not confident enough to just go set that up myself, which maybe I could have. And just that clarity that the profit first approach has provided, I just can't say enough how much it's reduced the stress. Like, you probably hear it all the time.
Well, I do personally. Obviously, again, that why I let you just share there is it's because those few minutes that you shared, it's 100% normalized. It's very normal. It's typical. It's whatever word we want to use for this idea for business owners everywhere for that matter. But again, it's why I love being in the allied health space, is because allied health practitioners, they want to look after people, but finances is never front of mind, top of mind. But again, as you articulated, you're very intelligent. You're actually quite good with numbers. You just need that little bit of confidence. And again, having a way or a framework that can work for people, as you've alluded to there, it can just really help things along that path that we can go, oh yeah, this doesn't need to be a massive thing where I need to know the ins and outs of financial reports and all these sorts of things. As long as I've got the confidence, the clarity, and able to simplify some things, then it can just be a process that happens. And I've got that there. And I know when the next bill is going to come in, because it's now been either explained to me or I can visualize it. And as you know, financial brain care model, which we're talking about the financial team. Again, you've got an awesome team already there, and then just having a little bit different skill set in there just makes that little bit of a difference. These days, the model, you've talked about profit first and then forecasting. I mean,
and that's,
hey, I've got a big block of money here that it's like so easy, or the credit limit. It's like, oh, I can just access this. It obviously makes a world of difference. Yeah,
well, it does. And I think it's that forecasting side of things, which is just not something really that you do. And well, I hadn't done it until we had started all of this. And that's kind of all I ever needed, like just knowing that these are the things coming up. And then I think also having those different pools of funds. And I'm very diligent. Every Monday I'm doing my calculations and doing all my transfers. And it's such a good feeling because I feel in control, and I was so out of control previously. And now I do feel in control. And it's not to say that like there's no financial problems, but I think at least just got more oversight.
Yeah, I love that. And again, because at the end of the day, it does come into this idea of if I'm feeling in control, we're looking after our brains. And you know that as good as anybody else with your background, your expertise yourself. And that's what we find from the financial side. If people have that feeling of in control and an awareness, even if things don't look great, at least I'm in control of it and I can see that I can take actions that can improve it. Therefore, now I've got something that I can mark. Again, come back to your words earlier. You can then evaluate, and I was looking for all these notes. I'm losing track of the testing and the evaluation, or measuring and evaluating. I'll put that in the middle, funnily enough, but there's so many things around it. But yeah, again, being able to have those markers to be able to do that, that's great. And I'd love to sort of move into you've done a bunch of all these experiments to create an amazing business that impacts, hundreds and probably thousands now over your 12 years in business. I'd love for you to sort of share some of those transformations that you've seen and you've experienced for your clientele. We love to hear these stories because we want practices out there providing these amazing experiences, these transformations, and we want them to have the sustainable business. So I'd love for you to share a story or two that just makes it all worthwhile for you.
Well, it's funny because the thing actually that jumps into my mind when you mention that isn't necessarily about clients, but it's about clinicians and employees. And maybe that comes back to my desire to create a workplace that is positive and people want to be in. And definitely there's numerous psychologists that I've had employed over the years, and watching them grow and develop and become confident, because none of us come out of our psych training with much confidence at all. And it's such a grey kind of world, psychology. And it's as in not black and white, not grey as in depressing, although can be. But watching that confidence develop in the clinicians and knowing that like I've been part of their journey, and that whether they've stayed with me or whether they've moved on to something else, and most of them I keep in touch with, and hearing where they are now, and some of them are overseas, or some of them are starting their own business. And it's really like nice to have played a small part in that journey. But it's similarly with clients as well. There's definitely some clients that I've worked with that, especially when I first started my business, and it does make you feel really old when you realise that these kids are adults now.
Those ones you were talking about when you started being 3 or 4-year-olds, and they're now the 20-year-olds.
So very humbling. But I think the feedback sometimes that we would receive, whether it's about me as a clinician or one of my team members as a clinician, but we get parents that email us and just with the most beautiful, positive feedback and an update on where they are now, and we were struggling as a family and blah, 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 and now this is where we are. And I think obviously that is what keeps us going as psychs. And so I guess it's that kind of transformation from both sides in terms of the clinicians, but then also from our clients.
That's so good. Again, what I'd written down here was, at the end of the day, it's the transformative ripple effect. And I love it for space. I love my football and coaching. And it's like, I don't want to coach the next Australian football player, but I'd love to coach the next Australian coach kind of idea. Is that idea of knowing that if we've had an imprint on somebody that they then go off to then coach more people, that it's just that ripple effect and that sort of expands out. And you're not looking after one individual person. And it's that idea of a business at the end of the day, a sustainable business that can impact people through the internal team. The ripple effect is that means we can serve more clientele, more people to get the outcomes that we're after. And you put this in the allied health space and the psychology space where there's such a demand, such a need out there for people to get these kinds of supports that constantly gives those sort of little goosebumps around that idea. So I love that share. And I love that was the first thing that came to mind was like how I've helped other people who help other people. It's such a lovely way to look at it.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's just that it's so rewarding. And like I said, it's what keeps us going. And I think knowing that you're playing a part in someone's journey and that it's leading them in a more positive or helpful direction, whether it's a clinician or it is a family, it really does give you that motivation to continue, because it is like, it's hard as a business owner, and I'm sure you hear lots of stories, and I've been ready to throw in the towel numerous times, and I've almost sold my business on probably 3 occasions, and it is hard, but then you kind of remember that, God, there's hundreds of families that come through the door every week and you're making a difference. Yeah. And I think there's a flow-on effect for our whole team. Yeah. In that regard. Well,
thank you for sharing all that you've shared on today's show. And again, we want you to continue providing amazing services and outcomes to everybody involved, both team and all your clientele, but also through what you've done here today, be able to share your knowledge and expertise. You're doing that with the wider allied health community. If other professionals want to reach out to connect and network and do those sorts of things, where's the best place for them to reach out to you?
Good question. Generally through our website, which is centreforchilddevelopment.com. Otherwise, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. So they're also good places to get me as well.
Awesome. Brilliant. As always, we'll put those links into the show notes that accompany this podcast, wherever you listen, watch, and everything in between. So once again, Amanda, really appreciate you sharing your insights from all your vast experience across the space. And again, as always, everybody, make sure you like, subscribe, and do all those sorts of things so we hear more cool stories like the one we've shared today. Once again, Amanda, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Craig.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Healthy Business Lab podcast. Make sure you subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest episodes.